bone and sickle, bleeding saints and forest witches, the past unburied, the books unsealed, the old celebration returning.
Hello, this is Mrs. Carswell. Mr. Ridenauer asked me to introduce the show this time because he's been sick. Probably bronchitis, but he wouldn't get it checked out. We recorded the regular show as he's now getting better, but not the usual preliminary chit-chat. So we'll go right to the main part now, as there's quite a lot of material on the subject. It will be a two-parter. This is Episode 154, Trolls, Part 1.
From the mountains he came, ancient, forgotten, unstoppable.
Running for their lives.
Houses crumbled, streets fell silent. Norway is no longer safe.
Something of a troll renaissance was initiated in 2010 with the release of the Norwegian found footage film Trollhunter, followed in 2022 by the Norwegian-produced Netflix film Troll and Troll 2 in 2025. And you've been hearing clips from those films. It's significant that these are all Norwegian productions. While trolls are part of the culture of all Scandinavian countries, Norway is ground zero and will be the focus in this episode. Trollhunter of the three is the most folklorically authentic and entertaining, I'd say, while the Netflix productions are essentially giant monster kaiju films, with the second culminating in a very King Kong versus Godzilla style showdown. Netflix films, and Trollhunter in its final scene, depict trolls as mountain-sized creatures, towering stony forms dotted with pines and vegetation. While there are no folktales that have trolls mistaken for land masses like the Kraken mistaken for an island, they are associated with geological formations that bear their names, shapes jutting from the landscape, often explained as the result of the troll having turned to stone when touched by the first rays of the sun, a bit of traditional lore that all the films get right. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the many Norwegian troll tales collected in the 19th century, and we'll start with how trolls appeared in the world of classical music.
Tell us about them.
Shall I tell you about the trolls?
Please.
All right.
They tower above the towering trees and stalk the step of the sinner. They frequently frown, bend down and seize, and eat the poor sinner for dinner.
But children who mind speak truth and are kind,
and finish the porridge that's poured in their bowls,
have nothing to fear from the fiercest of trolls.
Steer clear,
My dears, of trolls.
That odd little segment leads into the more familiar, which I'm sure you've all heard and probably know is called In the Hall of the Mountain King, that is, King of the Trolls. It's incidental music written by the Norwegian composer Edvard Grieg for an 1876 play by his countryman Henrik Ibsen, that is, Peer Gynt. Grieg himself was the unlikely subject of a famously bad musical biopic from 1970 called Song of Norway. The clip you heard realized a scene you've surely played out in your own imagination 1,000 times, namely Edvard Grieg and Bjørnstjerne Bjørnsen, who authored the lyrics of the Norwegian national anthem, both improvising a song about trolls for children. It's followed by a strange sequence featuring animated trolls from which the children flee screaming, much like audiences from the theaters in which this Super Panavision disaster played. Conceived as a sort of Sound of Music knockoff, Song of Norway featured Florence Henderson, later of the Brady Bunch, playing Grieg's cousin, singing and prancing about in frilly dresses and a Julie Andrews blonde bob in front of picturesque vistas, fjords, not Alps. Grieg's Hall of the Mountain King is probably now better known than the play from which it comes, so much so that you can no longer make a troll movie without its inclusion, as all 3 films discussed at the top of our show make sure to include it. However, lest you think trolls play a larger role in Peer Gynt than they do, I should note that they only appear in Act 2 of what was written as a 5-act, roughly 5-hour play, though it's rarely staged in this full form. In 1867, Ibsen conceived it strictly as a long narrative poem, and it was only in 1876 that he, somewhat unwillingly, agreed to see it produced on stage. Grieg refused to attend the premiere and was rather contemptuous in his comments regarding the troll music.
I came up with something for the Mountain King's Hall that I literally cannot bear to listen to. It reeks of cow pies, exaggerated Norwegian provincialism, and trollish selfishness.
We'll get to these complicated feelings about the folklore shortly, but I should first describe what happens in Act 2, the Troll Act. Peer, which is Norwegian for Peter, by the way, is wandering through the mountains when he encounters 3 dairymaids, and lots of flirting and serious drinking ensue. And the next day, struggling through a hangover, he stumbles into a rock and knocks himself unconscious. The balance of Act 2 is a dream experienced while he's out cold. Peer encounters an intriguing woman dressed in green, the daughter of the Troll King, it turns out. There's more flirting, and the next thing you know, the two are riding a giant pig into the Hall of the Mountain King. Grieg's music accompanies their entrance into the subterranean regions and the scenes they encounter within. Ibsen described the scene as
a great gathering of court trolls, gnomes, and goblins. The king on his throne with crown and scepter, his children and nearest of kin on either side. Peer Gynt stands before him. Uproar in the hall.
Soon after his entrance, the king accuses Peer of impregnating his daughter, followed by even greater uproar. Now, as to those complicated feelings mentioned earlier, the
cow pie provincialism,
which Grieg saw evoked in his music, and particularly that
trollish selfishness,
express attitudes shared by Ibsen. In fact, it's central to Peer Gynt. Having only passing familiarity with the play, you might believe it's a rollicking collection of folktale adventures, but in fact, Ibsen intended the play as a satire, with his protagonist representing the sort of selfishness Grieg references. Peer Gynt is actually a jerk in the play. In the first act, he kidnaps a bride from her wedding, seduces her, then ditches her, seduces more women, then goes on in later acts to impersonate a Bedouin prophet, and eventually becomes a slave trader. Ibsen's presentation of Gynt as an embodiment of the selfish Norwegian nationalism of his day, however, didn't exactly land as intended, as the play is now patriotically embraced as part of the Norwegian identity. And in the greatly abridged productions often produced today, Peer would be taken much more as a lovable rascal than despicable scoundrel. What Ibsen and Grieg were reacting to were nationalistic voices calling for Norway's independence. Denmark had governed Norway since the 14th century, and Norwegian intellectual and cultural life had congregated itself in Copenhagen, and the elites all spoke Danish rather than Norwegian. By the mid-1800s, the artistic movement known as Romantic Nationalism had arisen in response, one that celebrated the culture of the rural people left back in Norway, their folk tales and folk ways. Ibsen, whose publisher was in Copenhagen, but also loved his native land, found himself torn and addressed the issues in Peer Gynt. A major driver of Romantic Nationalism was the collaborative work of two Norwegian folklorists, Peter Christian Opsjensen and Jørgen Moe, who in 1841 published Norwegian folk tales, sometimes just called Opsjensen and Moe. Additional volumes followed in 1844, 1845, and 1871. Alongside this, Opsjensen worked as a zoologist specializing in marine life, and Moe as a bishop, poet, and author of children's stories. Unlike the brothers Grimm, to whom they are inevitably compared, Opsjensen and Moe collected stories in person, sometimes even traveling to less accessible rural areas on foot. But like the Grimms, they reproduced the stories in the unadorned, simple language of the people, in their case blending Norwegian with Danish, the latter being the standard language used in publishing, and the former being something embraced, of course, by the Romantic Nationalists. And, like the Grimms in pre-unification Germany, the collection of Opsjensen and Moe helped define a national identity, in their case providing a foundation for Norwegian independence. The popularity of Opsjensen and Moe's publication was greatly enhanced by the illustrations provided by Theodor Kittelsen and Erik Warensjø. Kittelsen's work is particularly iconic and familiar to every Norwegian. It's referenced in the film Trollhunter when the title character poses next to a famous painting of Askeladden, a troll-slain protagonist of several of the tales, and asks, "Do I look like him?" As the stories published were written as told, and tellers assumed listeners' familiarity with trolls, there's actually very little verbiage spent describing them. So many, if not most, of the visual attributes we imagine when we think of trolls are from Kittelsen. I'll have some of his work in the show notes if you want to check it out. But back to Peer Gynt. In a letter to his publisher, Ibsen claimed that Gynt was a real character, but that all that's known of him was recorded in High Mountain Scenes, Volume 2, Reindeer Hunt at Rondane. This was a book authored by Opsjensen, published sometime before 1846, into which he incorporates storytelling episodes in which hunters share tall tales. A few of these mention Peer Gynt, who is himself a hunter. Now, Act 2 of Ibsen's play, with the outraged trolls rushing the scoundrel who's impregnated their princess, ends with a sudden blackout and scene change. We next see him in the dark or semi-darkness, with Peer awakening and flailing at an invisible enemy. A voice identifies his antagonist as
the Beg.
This mysterious creature appears in Opsjensen's Reindeer Hunt, so we'll see what he has to say about it. The story appears in translation in the 1895 compilation of Opsjensen stories, Round the Yule Log, Christmas in Norway. In it, the translator renames the Beg Humpy, and for Peer, he uses the English equivalent, Peter. As night falls, Peter, who has been out hunting, sees a deserted hillside dairy where he intends to seek shelter. In the darkness, he suddenly runs up against something.
And when he put his hand out, he felt it was cold and slippery and very big. As he didn't think he had gone off the road, he had no idea of what this something could be. But unpleasant it was at any rate. "Who is it?" asked Peter, for he could now feel it was moving.
"Oh, it's Humpy,"
was the answer. Peter was no wiser for this, but he walked on one side for some distance, thinking that so he would be able to pass the mysterious presence. But he ran against something again, and when he put his hand out, he felt it was very big, cold, and slippery. "Who is it?" asked Peer Gynt.
"Oh, it's Humpy,"
was the answer again. Peter guessed now that he was walking round in a ring, and that the monster had circled itself round the dairy. Just when the monster shifted a little, and Peter got past, and soon found the house. When he came inside, he found it was no lighter in there than outside. He was feeling his way about along the wall to put his gun away, and hang his bag up. But while he was groping about in this way, he felt again something cold, big, and slippery. "Who is it?" shouted Peter.
Humpy, of course.
"It's not very pleasant to be here," thought Peter, "since this Humpy is both outside and inside, but I'll try if I can't shunt this intruder out of my way." So he took his gun and went outside, feeling his way carefully, till he found what he thought was the head of the monster, which he felt sure was a monster troll.
Not what you think a troll would be like, I'm sure, but will be seen that trolls can exhibit all sorts of unexpected attributes. Next, Peter
fired 3 shots right into the troll's head.
As he wanders on, mysterious voices from the hills taunt him along the way. Eventually, he spies another deserted dairy and decides to stop there to prepare a meal.
Sometime after, a troll came and poked his nose in. The nose was so long that it reached across the room to the fireplace.
"Here's a proper nose if you like,"
said the troll. "And here is proper soup. You never tasted the like." And with that, he poured the boiling soup over the troll's nose. The troll ran away wailing and crying, but in all the hills around, they were jeering and laughing, and the voices shouted, "Nosy stew! Nosy stew!"
That's right, nosy stew. Strange, but maybe there's some Norwegian context. But let's note that trolls do tend to have long noses. That's a trait that Obstjensen and Mo quite regularly mention. The next episode involves Peter's encounter with 3 dairy maids he comes across when he travels to another hillside dairy and finds 4 trolls
were inside courting the girls. Peter fired at one, but missed him. But the troll ran away frightened, and when Peter came inside, he found the trolls flirting with the girls more desperately than ever. 2 of the girls were terribly frightened and were saying their prayers, but the third, who was called Mad Kari, wasn't a bit afraid.
You'll notice that the trolls are hardly the size of mountains and seem fairly human also in their behavior. They even have normal, for Norway, human names like Rolf and Gust. Nonetheless, Peter takes it upon himself to kill them.
He fired a shot at Rolf, and then he killed Goose with the butt end of his rifle. Rolf had fled through the chimney.
So you have a troll small enough to flee through a chimney, perhaps aided by a bit of troll magic. We'll see plenty of instances of troll magic shortly. And after this, Peter accompanies the dairy maids to a safer place. One more Peer Gynt story appears in the collection. It's told to one of the reindeer hunters by a bird hunter they encounter. Osbjørnsen titles it
The Cat on the Dovre mountain.
That region, if not the story here, appears in Ibsen's play as the location where Peer enters the mountain, the Dovre mountain in south-central Norway. In fact, Ibsen's actual name for what I've been calling the Troll King or Mountain King for simplicity's sake, Ibsen actually calls the Dovre Gubben meaning something like guy or old fellow. So old man of Dovre mountain would be a more literal rendering. Fun facts, in the movie Trollhunter, this is the name given to a species of troll, and the Dovre mountain range is the setting of the Netflix movies. In any case, this last story is set at Christmas when troll encounters tend to be more frequent. Peter hears of a farmstead that's invaded by trolls every Christmas and decides to offer his services as a troll hunter. He has a very specific plan.
He dressed himself in some old ragged clothes and took a tame white bear, which he had with him, as well as an awl, some pitch, and twine.
The occupants of the farm are eager to accept his services, so he arrives and he
took out the awl and pitch and twine and began to make a big shoe, which it took the whole pig's skin to make. He put a strong rope in for laces, that he might pull the shoe tightly together. And finally, he armed himself with a couple of handspikes.
When the trolls arrive, Peter hides himself and they set about making a disgusting Christmas feast.
Some fried bacon and some fried frogs and toads and other nasty things which they had brought with them.
Soon they notice
the shoe Peter had made. They all wanted to try it on at once, so they put a foot each into it. But Peter made haste and tightened the rope, took one of the handspikes and fastened the rope around it, and got them at last securely tied up in the shoe.
Another definitive trait of trolls, they're stupid.
Just then, the bear put his nose out from behind the fireplace where he was lying and smelt that they were frying something.
Will you have a sausage, pussy?
Said one of the trolls, and threw a hot frog right into the bear's jaw. Scratch them, pussy, said Peter. The bear got so angry that he rushed at the trolls and scratched them all over, while Peter took the other handspike and hammered away at them as if he wanted to beat their brains out.
Years later, the owner of the farm is out cutting wood
when a troll came up to him and shouted,
"Have you got that big pussy of yours yet?"
"Oh, yes, she is at home behind the fireplace," said the farmer, "and she has got 7 kittens, all bigger and larger than herself."
"We'll never come to you anymore then,"
said the troll.
After making our way through these obscure and somewhat confusing Peer Gynt tales, let's do something simple.
This is the story of the 3 billy goats gruff.
The story appeared in Opsjonsson and Moe's first collection of folktales in 1841 under the title
The 3 Bruse Billy Goats, who were going to the summer farm to get fat.
Going up to summer pastures, that means. Billy goat, if you weren't sure, are male goats. And Bruse is a kind of nickname related to the word for tuft or clump, either vegetation or hair, like a goat's beard. Gruff seems to be chosen by the first translator, George Dasent, as this is how the last goat speaks to the troll, gruffly. Dasent's translation appeared in the 1859 book, Popular Tales from the Norse. If you need a refresher on the story, 3 goats, small, medium, and large, one after another cross the bridge, with the large coming last. When the troll threatens to eat the first 2, they say that a bigger goat is on the way and more worth eating, and the biggest one takes on the troll and wins. We have a couple more visual attributes of trolls in the text. He's described as having
eyes like tin plates and a nose as long as a rake handle.
The final goat is pretty intimidating too, boasting that he has horns
like spears.
And at the end, he has no trouble defeating the creature under the bridge.
It jumped on the troll and gouged out his eyes, broke both marrow and bone, and threw him over the waterfall. Then it went to the farm.
And after that, all 3 goats go off to get wonderfully fat. Now, to another troll tale collected by Asbjørnsen and Moe, the boy who had an eating match with a troll. It also appeared in their first collection and is extremely well known in Norway, enough so that it's also referenced in Trollhunter when the cameraman playfully asks the titular character about having an eating contest with a troll and is scolded for confusing fairy tales and reality. The story begins with a farmer asking his 3 sons to go cut some firewood with which the family can pay off some debts. The eldest is the first to go.
But when he had got well into the wood and began to hew at a mossy old fir, what should he see coming up to him but a great sturdy troll?
"If you hew in this wood of mine,"
said the troll,
"I'll kill you."
He runs home, and the father mocks him for his lack of courage. The second has a go at it, and likewise fails. The third son, whom Dasent for some reason nicknames Boots in our English translation, is known to be lazy, but agrees to the challenge as long as his mother packs him a big lunch. She has no cheese to send along, so she curdles a bit of milk on the spot and sends the fresh cheese in a pouch. Yes, this detail is actually important. Of course, he's also confronted by the angry troll.
But the lad was not slow. He pulled his cheese out of the pouch in a flash and squeezed it till the whey spurted out. "Hold her tongue," he cried to the troll, "or I'll squeeze you as I squeeze the water out of this white stone."
As you know, trolls are comically stupid, so the terrified creature not only allows the boy to chop wood, but joins in.
And the troll hewed so bravely that they felled many, many fathoms in the day.
As night draws near, they find themselves far from the boy's home, so the troll welcomes him to spend the night in his cottage. As the troll builds a fire, he asks the boy to fetch some water to make some porridge. But in the kitchen, he finds
2 iron pails so big and heavy that he couldn't so much as lift them from the ground.
Keeping up his ruse, Boots tells the gullible troll that rather than fetching water from the spring, he'd rather just fetch in the spring itself.
"Nay, nay, dear friend,"
said the troll.
"I can't afford to lose my spring. Just you make up the fire and I'll go fetch the water."
When he returns, the kid challenges the troll to a contest to see who can eat the most porridge.
"With all my heart,"
said the troll, for he thought he could surely hold his own in eating. So they sat down, but the lad took his pouch unawares to the troll and hung it before him. And so he spooned more into the pouch than he ate himself. And when the pouch was full, he took up his knife and made a slit in the scrip. The troll looked on all the while, but never said a word. So when they had eaten a good bit longer, the troll laid down his spoon, saying,
"Nay, but I can't eat a morsel more."
"But you shall eat," said the youth. "I am only half done. Why don't you do as I did and cut a hole in your belly? You'll be able to eat then as much as you please."
"But doesn't it hurt one cruelly?"
asked the troll. "Oh," said the youth, "nothing to speak of." So the troll did as the lad said, and then you must know very well that he lost his life. But the lad took all the silver and gold that he found on the hillside and went home with it, and you may fancy it went a great way to pay off the debt.
Poor stupid troll. Now, I mentioned that our translator had created the nickname Boots for his protagonist in this story, But in the Norwegian, he's called Askeladden. It's a name used for a character in several of Asbjørnsen and Moe's stories, usually describing a good-for-nothing youngest brother of a trio, an underdog who surprisingly achieves great things. For 19th century Norwegians who consider themselves cultural underdogs, Askeladden was regarded as an embodiment of their national spirit. He's an unlikely folk hero in the same way that Jack of Jack the Giant Killer and other tales was beloved by the British. Something of a mama's boy, Askeladden prefers to stay around the house by the hearth rather than venturing forth, at least until his surprising destiny calls. Askeladden isn't actually a proper name, but a nickname meaning
Ashlad.
Because he's imagined playing in the fireside ashes. There's a similar Norwegian folkloric character called Turi Hans in Asbjørnsen and Moe's story Turi Hans, who made the king's daughter laugh. Hans, of course, is a common name, and Turi means firewood, so it's a character good for little else than watching the firewood in the hearth. Now, you could think of Askeladden as just a dreamer staring into the flames, waiting for his big moment to come. But the original name for this character was hardly that kind. In fact, Asbjørnsen and Moe found the original name so offensive, they created the name Askeladden as a more acceptable substitute. The name actually used by the simple folk from whom they collected their stories actually meant ash farter, that is, Oskvisen. Some have suggested that fart is just a rude word for blowing in the embers, and I'm no expert in Norwegian, but I guess the name was more derogatory, with ash farting being something like pissing away time. Interestingly, there's also an older word, kolbitar, meaning coal biter, used to describe an unpromising male character in old Icelandic sagas. And there's also eldhusfif, meaning hearth fool, used as another sort of fireside insult for unambitious stay-at-homes. So there you have a little history of a family of rude Scandinavian insults. Our next troll tale from Asbjørnsen and Moe's collection is The Lad Who Met the Trolls in the Heidala Woods, which gives us some trolls in particularly grotesque and monstrous forms. They are encountered by two nameless and mischievous boys who have traveled too far from home and must sleep in the woods.
So, a little while after they had lain down, they heard something which sniffed and snuffled so with its nose. Then the boys pricked up their ears and listened sharp to hear whether it were wild beasts or wood trolls. And just then, something snuffled up the air, louder than ever, and said,
"There's a smell of Christian blood here! Oh!"
This is a common motif in troll stories throughout Scandinavia. It's possibly a way of suggesting the creatures belong to an older pre-Christian order, or that they simply live outside human civilization, i.e. Christendom.
At the same time, they heard such a heavy footfall that the earth shook under it. And then they knew well enough. The trolls must be about. All at once, they saw the trolls coming at them like mad. And they were so tall and stout, their heads were just as high as the fir tops. But it was a good thing they had only one eye between them all three, and that they used by turns. They had a hole in their foreheads, into which they put it, and turned and twisted it with their hands. The one that went first, he must have it to see his way, and the others went behind and took hold of the first.
Trolls with multiple heads, if not a shared eyeball, appear in several other stories in the collection, and in Trollhunter, of course. One of our plucky heroes grabs an axe and begins chopping away at the rear troll's ankle.
And the foremost troll got so afraid he was all of a shake and dropped the eye. But the boy was not slow to snap it up. It was bigger than 2 quart pots put together, and so clear and bright that though it was pitch dark, everything was as clear as day as soon as he looked through it.
If we don't get our eye back this minute, you shall both be turned to sticks and stones,
screeched the trolls.
However stupid they might be, trolls do often have magical powers or access to magical items.
But the boy thought things needn't go so fast. He was not afraid for witchcraft or hard words. If they didn't leave him in peace, he'd chop them all 3, so that they would have to creep and crawl along the earth like cripples and crabs.
The terrified trolls are reduced to begging, offering all their gold and silver in exchange for the lost eyeball. The boy demands that
2 good crossbows
be added to the bounty. The blind creatures aren't able to return home for their ransom, so
one of them began to bawl out for his good wife. For you must know they had a good wife between them all 3, as well as an eye.
She hears their calls across the valley and shows up with the goods, but
when she heard what happened, she too began to threaten them with witchcraft. But the trolls got so afraid and begged her beware of the little wasp, for they couldn't be sure he would not take away her eye too.
As you've seen, a moderately wise and brave human can often intimidate a troll, and so the troll wife forks over the ransom, and thereafter no snuffling troll enters Hedala Woods. Our next story is particularly famous in Norway, though the role played by trolls is somewhat peripheral. It's called
Soria Moria Castle.
Soria Moria.
Soria Moria.
Oh, Soria Moria.
That's from the trailer for a 2019 Norwegian fairy tale film by that name, a follow-up to 2017's Aslad and the Hall of the Mountain King. It's an English translation. It was the second highest grossing film in Norway that year, and is available here and there to stream, even with very good English dubbing.
The Mountain King.
You know that's just an old myth.
Now, Soria Moria is a longer story, a quest legend, rather than a short folk tale. The only appearance of trolls is in an early episode as a challenge the hero must overcome. His name, by the way, is given as Halvor, but he's easy to recognize as a Oskoladen type, described in the beginning as being lazy and literally sitting by the hearth raking ashes. Nonetheless, his interest is captured when a sea captain offers to take him aboard for a journey. He accepts, but the ship is blown off course by a storm, and Halvor begs the captain to go ashore, and the wish is granted. Halvor finds himself following a smooth, glass-like road leading to a castle, Soria Moria, which he enters only to find no one at home. Looking for food, he enters a kitchen filled with
vessels of gold and silver, but not one human being was to be seen. When Halvor had stood there for some time, and no one had come out, he went in and opened a door, and inside a princess was sitting at her wheel spinning. "Nay," she cried, "can Christian folk dare to come hither? But the best thing that you can do is to go away again, for if not, the troll will devour you. A troll with 3 heads lives here." I should have been just as well pleased if he had had 4 heads more.
The princess encourages the cocky visitor to arm himself with an enormous troll sword hanging on the wall. He finds it's too heavy to lift, but thankfully there's also a bottle with some magical concoction that provides him the strength to do it. More troll magic.
And now he thought it was high time for the troll to make his appearance. And at that very moment he came, panting for breath. Halvor knocked behind the door. "Oh!" said the troll as he put his head in at the door. "It's smells just as if there were Christian man's blood here. Yes, you shall learn that there is, said Halvor, and cut off all his heads.
Having freed the princess, she immediately demands that he likewise free her two sisters, who also happen to be held by trolls in two different castles. When they arrive at the first, the same episode repeats, but this time the troll has 6 heads, the princess is older and more beautiful, and the castle more grand. At the third castle, which is more grand still, he finds the oldest and most lovely of the princesses and a troll with, you might have guessed, 9 heads. Not a problem, Halvor dispatches him too. The 3 princesses rejoice, but Halvor can't really share in their joy as he finds himself suddenly homesick. He's provided with fine clothes and a ring that will magically send him home and then back to the castle. But some misadventures ensue, and I won't go into all the troll-free episodes, but along the way, again looking for food, he stumbles upon
a wretched little cottage, and through a small pane of glass, he saw a couple of old folks inside. They were very old and as gray-headed as a pigeon, and the old woman had such a long nose that she sat in the chimney corner and used it to stir the fire.
Good evening,
said the old hag.
But what errand have you that can bring you here? No Christian folk have been here for more than 100 years.
Trolls, of course, of a friendlier disposition. He asks the troll wife if she knows the way to Song of Norway, and she goes off to ask her friend, the moon, who sends Halvor to ask the west wind, who takes him on another series of adventures involving magic boots and a talking horse, and so on. Anyway, in the end, he finds Song of Norway arriving in disguise just as the youngest of the princesses he rescued is about to be wed. When he flings off his ragged coat, he's recognized, and the bride declares that she will wed him instead. So it's happily ever after for everyone, except, of course, the jilted groom. If the trolls in the last story seem a bit atypical, it's probably because you associate trolls more with mountains, caves, and forests. And for this, you can thank Norway's Romantic Nationalism. Romanticism in general was fascinated with nature, and trolls came to be imagined as embodying nature, something ancient and primitive, rather than as a parallel race building and residing in their own castles and homes. In fact, there are more stories representing this sort of troll than those wandering out in the forests or living under bridges. These more civilized trolls play the role that ogres do in French folklore or giants in Britain, and are particularly fond of abducting human women. We have one more story with a troll with a thing for human women. It's a shorter, well-known tale called The Hen Trips in the Mountain. The weird title represents a strange phrase uttered to open a door in a mountain, like open sesame. It doesn't have to mean anything. Maybe it's supposed to be nonsensical, like a password you might create for online security. Anyway, it's about a poor woman who has 3 daughters and a hen. One day, the hen runs off, and the woman asks the daughters to go find it. The eldest daughter ventures forth, and, nearing the mountain, hears a voice utter the door-opening phrase.
She had scarce set her foot inside the cleft before she fell through a trapdoor, deep, deep down into a vault underground. When she got to the bottom, she went through many rooms, each finer than the other. But in the innermost room of all, a great, ugly man-troll came up to her and asked,
"Will you be my sweetheart?"
Unfortunately, the girl refuses the proposition, and the troll
got so angry that he took her up and wrung her head off and threw both head and trunk down into the cellar.
This sequence is repeated by the middle daughter, and then the youngest sets out. After glimpsing her 2 dead sisters, she chooses a more pragmatic response to the sweetheart query.
With all my heart, answered the girl.
The happy troll rewards her with fine clothes and anything she wishes.
So, when the girl had been in the hill a good bit longer, one day a billy goat fell down the trap door.
It so happens that the troll that day is
in an awful rage, and with that he whipped up the goat and wrung his head off and threw him down into the cellar. "Oh," said the girl, "why did you do that? I might have had the goat to play with down here."
Wanting to please the girl, the troll then
took a flask which hung up against the wall, put the billy goat's head on his body again, and smeared it with some ointment out of the flask. And he was as well and lively as ever again.
This gives the girl an idea. So one day when the troll is out, she uses the ointment to revive her sisters. The 3 return to her mother's home, and a neighbor with a gun is called over to defend them against the troll, who is already in hot pursuit.
But when he reached the cottage, the sharpshooter fired off his piece, and then the troll dared not go into the house, for he thought it was thunder. So he set off home again, as fast as he could lay legs to the ground. But what do you think? Just as he got to the trap door, the sun rose, and the troll burst.
You've heard of sun-touched trolls turning to stone, but exploding is also a common response featured in several Asbjørnsen and Moe tales, so don't get near a troll at sunrise. To wrap up, a bit more on trolls in pop culture. It's not something I have a particular affinity for, but it would be remiss of me not to mention the role trolls play in a particular music genre, namely metal. Death metal, black metal, industrial sludge, and folk metal, they all love trolls. The very thorough website Encyclopedia Metallum allowed me to calculate some stats on all this. Turns out there are 7 bands calling themselves simply Troll, and 32 others with Troll in their name. As for songs, a grand total of 414 were listed on the website. I thought we might end the show with a reading of some of these titles. Trollhammer,
Rock and Troll,
Troll Zeppelin,
Tomb of Troll,
Ritual Troll,
Unleash the Troll,
Mama Troll,
The Weeping Troll,
or Troll Than Troll,
Troll in My Hole,
Troll Stench,
Fear the Troll,
Bog Troll,
Super Troll Blaster,
Drunk Troll,
Tears of Troll,
Troll Skull,
Breath of the Troll,
To Troll or Not to Troll,
Troll of Diamond Stained Glass,
Troll Throttle is stuck on Troll,
My Way to Trollland,
The Misty Mountain Troll,
The Summoning Troll,
Three-Headed Troll,
Hunting of the Troll Queen,
Pissed Off Troll,
I Am the Troll Wizard,
and Frost Troll Glory Hole. And more Troll next episode. That's not a band title.